Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca, Virginia. I hope you all had a wonderful 4th of July and stayed nice and cool. It is a hot one out there, so I thought I would bring some fun summer DIYs to you. And I think for the next video, I'm going to do Christmas in July because I am just really trying to manifest a little bit of cooler weather. First up, we have a no-sew strawberry. You could sew it if you want to. I'll show you how to do that, but I'm also going to be showing you how to just do it with some hot glue. And if you want to do this with the kids, then you could just use some craft glue. I'm taking these half moon shape scraps of fabric. This was just from my leftover fabric stash, and any pretty much fabric that I had that was red. I cut out these half moon shapes and they were 7 inches across. I folded them in half, having the nice side of the fabric that I want to be shown on the inside and the side that I don't want to be shown on the outside. So while I let those hang out, I started heating up my hot glue gun, and in the meantime, I started to cut out what's going to be the top of our strawberries. Basically, it's like an X shape out of some green felt fabric. Once my hot glue gun was ready to go, I just added a little bit onto the edge and then folded it over. This way you can kind of see it's gonna have a cone shape once we flip it inside out. So again, just going down with some hot glue. This one, I did grab a needle and thread, and so if you don't want to use the hot glue, you would just use needle and thread here. Same with the top section, you could take some needle and thread and just do a basting stitch to tie that strawberry nice and tight. But I didn't want to have to bring out the thread and needle again, so I grabbed some of these small elastic hair ties, and that is how I'm bunching the fabric together at the top to be the top of our strawberry and just cutting off any of that excess. Once the hot glue was completely dry, and you definitely want to wait until it's completely dry here, it's time to flip your strawberries. So flip them right side out, and then I started to stuff them. I got the fabric stuffing. Usually I go to Joann's, but I had a really big bag of it for $1.25 in the Crafter Square section. So that's what I'm using to stuff these strawberries. And again, I picked up the clear elastic hair ties. They're in the hair section at Dollar Tree, and I think you get either 100 or 1,000. It's a bunch of them, and they're really great for using on different projects when you need something a little bit smaller and more see-through than a rubber band. So I just tied those up at the top of all of our strawberries and then went in with my scissors just to trim everything down before we go in with our green tops, which we're gonna put on top of our strawberries. Something that I learned the hard way is that when the elastics are exposed to heat, they will snap. So if you put the hot glue directly onto the strawberry and then put the green top on, the elastic will probably snap off and your strawberry will pop open. So make sure to actually just put the hot glue straight down onto the green strawberry top and then push that down onto your strawberry, making sure to avoid the elastic as best as you possibly can. Otherwise, yeah, you're gonna have your elastic snapping everywhere. I learned that after the third one snapped that, oh, I should probably stop using heat on this. I couldn't do a strawberry video without making a strawberry jam jar. I loved strawberry jam as a kid. I thought it was far superior to raspberry or grape, even like strawberry jelly. I know it's a little different than jam, but I always like strawberry jelly on my PB&Js, so I was quite partial. I grabbed a mason jar and I covered it in a color I thought was very fitting. It's called Berry Red by Apple Barrel. I've been using this burlap bag as scrap fabric basically for a while now. I used it in some fall DIYs. One whole side of the bag is missing, so this turned into my burlap scraps. I placed this underneath the lid of our mason jar and then put the jar lid back on top and then trimmed off any of the excess. And in true me fashion, I completely forgot to film the magical transition of vinyl going on this, but I did use my cutting machine to cut out the strawberry jam. I will have a printable link down below in case you guys want to use this. You can cut it out and use some Mod Podge to place it on your jam jar. And for the final touch, I added a small bow to the center of the jam jar. Nothing says summer to me like some candles. I like to put them out either on the screened-in porch or even on the front porch. Bonus points if it's citronella to keep those pesky bugs away. And the Dollar Tree tall candles are perfect for this. You can customize it so many different ways. I love taking these for every season, but especially the white ones in the summer I think look really nice and pretty much accent any kind of decor that you have on your porch or deck. I used my cutting machine to cut out Hello Summer. And then I wanted to add a little bit more of a DIY touch. So I went a little bit old school and I'm just going to be painting on some strawberries. I know I could have used vinyl for this, but I don't know. I was just in the mood to paint. So I went in with, this is just red. It's not berry red by Apple Barrel. It's just red by Apple Barrel. And then went in with a little bit of black to, of course, add the seeds. And then final touch was adding the stems and the little green toppers. This color is just called Green by Folk Art. I feel like now that May is almost through and we're right on Memorial Day weekend, that summer really is here. So let me know in the comments down below. Does it feel like summer to you? Are you getting your deck or your house ready with either summer decor? Let me know how you guys decorate. Usually for summer, I just like to add a little bit of lemon, some fruits. I always think that's fun. I know some people like to do a lot of beach decor. So let me know in the comments down below. We can take some ideas from each other and see how we all decorate for the summer. The next DIY is using a hack you may have heard of. I know I had heard of it, but I had never personally done it on a DIY before. This is really going to come in handy. It uses saran wrap and it is a great way if you don't have iron-on vinyl. It's pretty much how to turn fabric into an iron-on without having to go out and buying either backing to make the fabric iron-on and have adhesion, or again, having to go out and buy on iron-on vinyl. So I cut out a small piece of saran wrap, and this is just plain old kitchen saran wrap, nothing special about it. Didn't get it from the fabric store or anything, got it from Walmart. And I'm putting it over this bunny bag that I picked up in the springtime from Dollar Tree. This is a piece of red fabric. I scalloped the edges just by using my scallop scissors. So you're gonna do the bunny bag, saran wrap, the fabric, and then over that I took some parchment paper because you don't want the saran wrap to adhere to your iron. That would not be fun. And I just took my little mini heat press iron on the highest setting, the cotton setting, and ran it over that for about 20 to 30 seconds. And magically the saran wrap is gone, the fabric is adhered, and it's pretty amazing. It's like a little bit of a magic trick. And then for the front of it, I took this little locally fresh berries sign. This was from one of the Dollar Tree calendars, but on the back of the calendar, it shows you all 12 months. And this was, I forget, but one of the summer months. So I just cut that out and used a little bit of Mod Podge to adhere it to the top. I stuffed it full so it looked like it was full of berries, and then just took a little bit of this jute rope to tie everything off before trimming the top because it did have bunny ears and I did not want it to have bunny ears for this DIY. The final touch was some black and white gingham ribbon. I thought it added a nice contrast to the red. I just made a small bow with this and dovetailed the ends of it and adhered it onto our bag. I love using these little sticker dots from the Dollar Tree. I picked them up in the Crafter Square section a couple of years ago, and they come in so handy when you don't want to take out your hot glue gun again, but you need something to stick. This next DIY would be a really fun one to do with kids. I ended up using a glass jar, actually that used to hold a dessert from Costco in it, but the Dollar Tree sells the little clay pots, I believe in two to a pack. So those would also work really well and again, be very fun for the kids to do. You could have a nice summer activity. But again, mine is the glass dessert jar from Costco. Always comes in handy. And I'm taking the color Berry Red again by Apple Barrel and covering all around the glass. A little bit of a tip is to mix in a bit of Mod Podge with your paint. Sometimes when you paint on glass, it can get streaky or even peel off, but adding that little bit of Mod Podge makes it really easy to work with glass. Next, I took the color Grass Green by Folk Art, and basically, I'm just making the tops of the strawberries. It's pretty easy. I just did a V and then filled in the color, and I went all the way around our glass jar. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit the thumbs up button at the bottom of this video. That is the like button. It really helps out my channel. And if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. During the non-summer months, I come out with a new video once a week. And during the summer months, it's going to be every 2 weeks. So I will be back again in 2 weeks after this video airs with a brand new summer DIY video. For the seeds, pretty simple. I took some black paint and my paintbrush and basically made a dot and then dragged up just a tiny bit. So I kind of got the look that the seed, is a little bit skinnier at the top. Again, just going all the way around, but you can always use a Sharpie for this if you don't want to use black paint or dirty another paintbrush. I like the rustic look, so of course I had to add in a little bit of jute. I just wrapped it, I think 3 times. Yeah, 3 times all the way around the top and knotted it in the back, and then of course trimmed off the edges. I liked the look that that gave. And then for the absolute final, I put in a little citronella candle. I'm going to put this on my front porch, but if you're either having this in the house or if you are around kids, you can always put in a flameless LED candle. Next, we have got the watermelon DIYs. There's nothing better in the summer than a delicious, crisp piece of watermelon. So I made a bunch of DIYs with the watermelon theme.
Starting off with our watermelon mason jar welcome sign, I taped out this section of the mason jar. You could just freehand it if you want to, but I am not the cleanest of painters, so I decided to start with painter's tape. And I took the shade Berry Red by Apple Barrel. And then for the top section of our mason jar, which is supposed to be the lid, I took the shade Elephant by Waverly in the Waverly chalk paint and painted the top. Because I wanted the bottom of our mason jar to have a curved edge, it's really hard to create a curve with painter's tape. So this part I did freehand, and you'll see me go back and forth a couple times throughout this project with painter's tape and freehanding. I love the clean edges of the painter's tape, but again, it's just really hard to get that to curve. And right now I am creating the rind of our watermelon. Again, you can see me go in with the painter's tape and try to see if I could make it work. And the first shade of green that I used was the shade Palmetto by Delta Creative. And then the one that I'm going in with now is called Celery by Waverly. And then lastly, I just used the shade Green by Apple Barrel, and that is going to be the main end of our watermelon. Now that the initial colors are all set on the mason jar, it's time to start adding the little details and some shading. So I'm going in with my really fine point detailing tool and some black paint and just adding definition to the top of our mason jar lid. I outlined the lid with black paint, and then I went in with a fine point paintbrush and some white paint to highlight some of the areas. So I'm making some white lines just where the black added definition. We're now adding the light white to highlight. And now I'm adding in all of these little details on our sign. So I took that really small detailing tool and some white paint, and I just created, I guess I would call them squiggles, just little squiggles of varying lengths all along the curved edges of our watermelon rind. Then I'm just adding a few more details to the bottom watermelon rind section of the mason jar. So along here, I'm just putting little white polka dots kind of at different angles. And then on the lower dark green section of our watermelon rind, I'm taking my same tool and white paint and making little trio clusters of white dots along the bottom. For the welcome part of my sign, I decided to make a stencil out of some Oracle vinyl. I will have the kind that I use linked below. And I decided to use a stencil rather than a vinyl decal because everything in my sign was paint, and I thought it would look a little weird if I had some shiny vinyl also on the sign. So I decided to just make a stencil and then go over it with some Waverly white chalk paint. And then I'm just using my little Cricut weeding tool to get out any other little bits of the stencil. And last part pretty much is making the seeds for our watermelon. So I just took a small paintbrush and some black paint and just freehanded on some watermelon seeds. The sign already came with this jute hanger, so I went ahead and just placed that back in the sign to act as the hanger. As the last final touch, I added in a raffia bow and then just trimmed it down to size. After adding the bow, your watermelon sign is all ready to be displayed. You can always make this sign with different types of fruit. I think lemon, kiwi, and even strawberry would look great. Our second DIY is a watermelon glass. This is a really simple DIY that uses very few supplies. For this next project, we are going to be using one of these stemless wine glasses that I got from the Dollar Tree. And then I took some paint. This is the Coat paint in the shade Watermelon, so very fitting. And I did dilute it in water. I don't want this to be opaque. I want it to be, I guess, kind of like a stain. So I diluted the paint a lot in water and then just brushed it on. To create the watermelon rind effect on our stemless wine glass, I am taking one of my favorite supplies ever to use, and that is jute. And I'm just wrapping this around the wine glass. It's a little bit tricky at first when you're working with the bottom of it, but then once you get to more of the center part of the wine glass, it's really easy to just wrap all around. While I was adding the jute, I noticed that some of the paint was chipping off of my wine glass. And to prevent this from happening, I took some of this dishwasher safe Mod Podge. It really seals in the paint and makes it basically waterproof. So I added this on, and this helped prevent my paint from chipping. And also, because this is a drinking glass, I'm going to be hand washing it with soap and water before and after use. So this will really help make it waterproof. Today's video is really highlighting all of these amazing plaid products. Plaid owns Folk Art, Apple Barrel, Mod Podge, Waverly. They have so many amazing items, and I am a plaid ambassador for them. They're not paying me to promote any of their products, but they did very kindly send me a lot of the paints that I'm using today for this watermelon video. One of them being this holly green color that I'm using to paint over the jute. This is going to be the bottom section of our watermelon rind. So I'm going ahead and painting all of the jute in this green color. Now I'm using my detailing tool and some black paint and drawing on our watermelon seeds. I started off a little too tiny on the seeds, so I had to make them a little bit bigger, but it's better to start off small, then you can always go in and add more paint. And I just added them at diagonals all the way around our watermelon glass. I absolutely love how this DIY came out, and I cannot wait to be sipping out of this fun cup all summer long. The next DIY is a fun piece of summer decor that would look great displayed on a tiered tray or anywhere in your home to add a touch of summer. So hopefully you've seen them at your Dollar Tree, but I have seen these little signs with what appear to be ceramic coasters in them all over my Dollar Tree in lots of different designs, so I wanted to do a DIY with one of them. So I just popped out the coaster. It was really easy. I just pushed and the coaster popped out. And then I had planned to stain the wood because most of the Dollar Tree is unfinished wood, like in the little wood houses that they have or in their canvas frames. But this one was finished, so the stain would not stick to it at all. So I had to improvise and go in with my Apple Barrel Burnt Umber paint. So I'm just going in and painting the entire frame in a dark brown. Then I flipped over the coaster, didn't even have to paint it, and just popped it in, and I had a perfect blank canvas. You can use paint or lettering or a sticker, but I chose to make my own vinyl decal, actually using the green Dollar Tree vinyl. And then I took some of these wood fruit stickers from the Dollar Tree and painted it into a watermelon to place in the corner of my little decor piece. Lastly, to embellish this decor piece, I took a gingham ribbon and turned it into a bow to place on top. I thought it was really fitting and made it kind of look like a picnic tablecloth. I love the gingham ribbon in this DIY. Again, it just reminds me of a summer picnic, and the pops of bright red in this piece really make it stand out, especially if you were to display it on a shelf. I think these are perfect for the summer. They're super fresh looking, so I think I'm definitely going to use some of this decor around my house. So starting off this craft, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted the background to be. I loved the black and white striped paper, and originally I thought I was going to do it on one of the Dollar Tree cutting boards, but you'll see after I cut it out, I just did not like the way that this was coming together. I don't know if the actual Dollar Tree cutting board was a little too farmhouse, and then the black and white was too modern for me. But either way, I decided that I did not like it, and that's okay in crafting.
That's why you want to figure out hopefully what you like before you start putting the hot glue down, which I did in this case, so I was lucky. I decided instead to go with this little canvas from a Dollar Tree. It was covered in some burlap, but I decided to cover it in this paper. I've had it for a while. I think I did another Farmhouse DIY with it. So I just put down a little bit of hot glue all down the front of it, and then also some on the top so that none of the paper would pop up. This next part is a very much trust the process, so I needed to trace out a lemon onto some scrapbooking paper. This is very thick scrapbooking paper. I started off by drawing a circle, then making the circle a little bit bigger, doing kind of like this elongated M at the top, and then making a little nub on the bottom of it. And it looks crazy, but I promise that once I actually cut it out and flip it so you can't see any of the drawing lines, it really looks like a great lemon shape. So this technique worked. I Googled how to draw a lemon and it said a circle, you do the M at the top and a little nub at the bottom. And I think it came out pretty well. Then I covered it entirely in yellow paint. This one's called just yellow by Folk Art. And because this is paper, I just went in with a pretty thin coat because I didn't want the paper to pop up or get warped too much. Next, I'm going to place this on top of our black and white striped canvas. And I had some of this lemonade ribbon. I think I've had it for about 2 years now. I got it from the Dollar Tree. So it was the perfect excuse to actually use it. And I'm going to be doing a cinched bow. So you just take a piece of ribbon and basically create a loop with it. When you're working smaller, you don't need to add hot glue like me because you'll go in with some more ribbon. And then super simple, you just cinch it in the middle. Again, you would want to go in with some jute or another kind of ribbon to tie it off, but for this one I wanted the lemonade and all the cute little sayings that it has on it on that ribbon to kind of be the focal point, so I just adhered it with some hot glue instead of cinching it with that jute. And then lastly, it was time to just start hot gluing everything together. I have some burlap ribbon that I made an X out of, and for the leaves on our lemon, I have some green felt fabric, so I just cut out pretty much what kind of look like bunny ears and placed those on top of the burlap ribbon. And then to hide the edges of where our felt leaves were, I placed the ribbon that I showed you guys how to turn into a bow right on top of that. That way you don't see any of the raw edges of the leaves and it really looks like it's coming right out of our lemon. Next one I think is my favorite. I had a lot of fun with this 2 weeks ago when I made my faux stuffed strawberries, and just as much fun making some lemons. I'm having a lot of fun with fabric DIYs this summer. I don't usually work too much with fabric, but it's been a lot of fun. So I cut out 3 lemon shapes, basically circles that have a little bit more of an oval shape at the bottom there. And you can definitely sew this. Or if you want to be a little more precise with your hot glue, instead of like me where I'm just gluing the kind of bad sides of the fabric together, you could glue it with the pretty sides of the fabric and then turn it inside out. That tends to work a little bit better when you're sewing though, because the hot glue does pull apart pretty easily. So if you're gonna sew, you can definitely sew, the pretty sides of the fabric together and then pull the fabric through. But to be a little bit faster and I think a little bit more friendly to a hot glue gun user, I just laid down the hot glue around the edges, leaving the top part open, and then put the other piece of fabric on top and just kind of held it down until the glue dried. Then once your glue is completely dried, and you really want to make sure it's completely dried with the hot glue, because if you start stuffing the lemon when it is not dry, it just kind of becomes a disaster. I went in and started filling up my lemons with some of this fill that I picked up from the Crafter Square section. I used the same green felt for my lemon leaves as I did in the first DIY, folded the fabric in half so I could make the process a little bit faster and cut 2 at a time. And really my goal here was just to do bunny ears, and I thought that was a good leaf shape. Then I tucked down my felt leaves into that open part of my lemon, and taking a small clear elastic hair tie, I just tied it all together. You can definitely go in with ribbon or jute or even hot glue, but I'm going to be covering these with a bow, and I really like the clear elastic so it makes everything a lot less messy than the hot glue. But to cover up where you're going to be able to see that clear elastic, I grabbed some jute and just made really simple bows out of them like you would if you were tying your shoes. And this part you want to be careful on because if you get the hot glue while it is super hot onto the elastic hair ties, it will pop them. A little bit of a good tip, if you were trying to get them out of your hair, you can take your curling iron or your hair straightener and the heat will immediately snap these little elastic bands, but not so great when you're crafting. So make sure you don't put the super hot glue right on them, or put it on the bow and then wait a little second or two until the glue gets a little cooler before you attach your bow on. This next DIY might be the easiest of the bunch, and we're using some recycled craft supplies for this one. This glass jar is actually an old candle. I pop it in the freezer once I'm done burning it, so that small bit of wax that's usually at the bottom of a candle, once it has been in the freezer for a while, it will just pop right out and you can use it for a DIY. I took a really thick piece of cardstock and measured it to fit inside my candle, both lengthwise and height. For this candle, it was about 9 inches long and 4 inches in width. And then I cut out a piece of yellow fabric to be that exact same length as well. I just added a tiny bit of blue tape to get the fabric to wrap around our heavy cardstock, and then I just popped it right into the jar. This way you don't have to use any Mod Podge when you're working with the fabric or hot glue. It just goes right around that heavy cardstock and fits perfectly into the glass candle jar. The image that I Mod Podge down onto the front of this jar is actually from a Dollar Tree calendar. It's one of the small images in the back when you can preview what all 12 months are going to look like. There was a month that had lemons on it and it really fit the size of this jar perfectly. So I placed that right down in the center. And for a final touch, I wasn't sure if I wanted to add a label or anything. I originally thought it was, that's why I slipped that onto the raffia, but I decided to just go with a simple raffia bow. Our next DIY is going back to some YouTube crafting basics. I am going to be decorating a Dollar Tree sign and making it to fit with our summer lemon theme. I picked up this galvanized mason jar sign from the Crafter's Square section, and we are going to transform it into a delicious looking mason jar full of some lemonade. So for the border of this, I took a blue color, I believe it was called Pool, and I'm just painting all around the edges of the mason jar. Then I went in with a pale yellow color. This one is from Apple Barrel, and pretty much I'm just outlining where I want it to look like the lemonade is inside the mason jar. I went in with a small paintbrush and then back in with a thicker one, adding a couple of coats of this pale yellow color to really get the lemonade color as perfect as I could. I used my cutting machine and some vinyl to adhere the Hello Summer in cursive onto the front of the mason jar, but you can always just paint this on yourself, use sticker letters, or print it off and stick it on. That is actually what I am doing with these lemons and ice cubes. So I printed these images out. I just Google searched lemons and lemonade ice cubes, and I put these in a Word document and printed them onto some sticker paper. Then I cut them out using my scissors, and you can see me using my weeding tool there to peel off the backing and then just sticking them down. I am not the greatest painter or artist, so rather than having to draw on all of the lemons, I thought I would let my printer do the work, and I haven't done a DIY with sticker paper, I don't think, in a long time, so it was something a little different. To add a little bit more definition to the mason jar, I went in with some white paint just to add the ridges around the mason jar top, and then to also accent certain parts of the mason jar itself. After I threaded the jute hanger back through our sign, it came with this hanger, I went about making the bow for this. So I started off with some burlap ribbon. I'm going to be doing an X bow. They're super simple. You just cut out 2 strips and you make an X. So I have the burlap ribbon and then also this red gingham, and I made a double bow using some twine that I had. And to pull this all together, I'm just using some hot glue. You can always use a zip tie, especially if you're using a lot more ribbons. If you've seen any of my wreath DIY videos, I love using the zip ties to keep the ribbons in place. And then after I hot glued it all together, I got my super sharp scissors and I dovetailed the ends so they had a nice little accent on them. And really the final touch here is I wanted to add a straw. I was going to paint one at first, and then I remembered that I had these straws actually in my kitchen. So I went in, figured out the sizing that I wanted, cut it down, and then hot glued everything together. This next DIY is super simple, but I think what really makes it is adding some greenery and faux lemons to the background. If you want to transform your mantle or maybe have a fresh lemon area in your kitchen, I think these arches from the Dollar Tree are going to be your best friend. You could even glue a couple of them together to make a really long archway. I'm just using one for this. I ended up putting it on my fireplace mantle. I painted it a gray color and then went in with a dry brush and some white paint to give it that farmhouse look. I had a bunch of these tags. I actually got them for Christmas and I hadn't used them yet. So I had some lemon scrapbooking paper and I traced out the shape and then cut it out and glued it down onto the little wood sign and then hot glued it onto our arch. So as you can see, it's an incredibly easy DIY, but what I think really makes the biggest impact is because the arch has all of these holes through it, anything that you put behind it really just shines through. You could do strawberries if you want that. You could do lemons. There's all sorts of different things that you can do with it, but I think this is a great accent piece. It looks very farmhouse and I think a lot more expensive than $1.25. Okay, I know what you're thinking. I know sunflowers are not a fruity DIY, but this is going to be my last summer themed DIY video for the year. So I wanted to throw some sunflowers in. In 2 weeks, I'll be coming out with a Christmas in July video. And then after that, I have some fun thrift flips. And then believe it or not, we are going to be heading into the fall DIYs. I know, it's crazy. This first one, I am using the lid of a mason jar, but you could use a circle ring, you could use a paper towel holder if you cut it off, you can cut out a circle out of cardboard. Doesn't really matter because we're going to be hiding this. Then I cut a bunch of strips of yellow fabric. They were roughly an inch in width and roughly 6 inches in length, but I just kind of eyeballed it. These are going to be scraps and I'm trimming them anyway, so it's not super particular on what the sizing is, and I just had a bunch of yellow scrap fabric from different projects that I had. So any kind of fabric that you have laying around the house, maybe an old t-shirt, I'm going in with all of my yellows and just tying them in a knot. I was good with just using one knot. If you're using longer strips of fabric, you might need to double knot it, but I ended up trimming this at the end anyway, so one knot worked out for me. I went in with some tie-dye yellow fabric. I have polka dot, and then you'll see me in just a little bit go in with some burlap fabric for the center. This is a super easy DIY. You're just cutting out strips of fabric and tying it. It does take a little bit long, so put on your favorite YouTube show, maybe something on Netflix, and just start tying all around your circle. Then I wanted to trim off some of our fabric petals, so I just grabbed my scissors. I wanted it about medium length, so I just went around and gave it a little haircut. And like I mentioned earlier, I took some burlap fabric for the center. I just hot glued it in there, and then I went around it with my precision scissors and trimmed off all of the excess. Now that the sunflower is done, I need to add a stem because I wasn't sure exactly at this point in the craft what I was going to put them in, but I figured a planter or a mason jar, something like that. So I did hot glue on a bamboo skewer. I get these in a pack of, I think, 100 in the kitchen section of the Dollar Tree. Another example of something that you can use if you don't have a mason jar lid, these wood rings came in a pack in the Dollar Tree Crafter Square section. So when I made my smaller version of the sunflowers, I used one of these wood rings and went in with some more yellow fabric. You can't tell quite enough on the video, but although it's yellow, it had a little bit of different design on the actual fabric. I think this one was polka dot and maybe a paler kind of yellow. So I went in with this dark gingham and did the exact same thing. I hot glued it down into the center and then cut off any of the excess before also adding a bamboo skewer onto this sunflower. I couldn't stop at just 2 sunflowers. I remember when I was younger watching something on, I think, HGTV, and I don't remember if it was called The Rules of Threes or just odd numbers in general, but the designer on that show said that everything looks better in odd numbers, specifically groups of 3. I don't always adhere to that, but it is something that I have always kept in the back of my mind. It's so funny the things that you hear that stay with you and the things that don't, but that is something that I always kind of take into account in any of my crafting and my design work. So on our last sunflower, I did the same yellow fabric on this one, but then instead of doing the gingham as the center, I went in with some more of that burlap fabric. This is a mason jar. If you haven't checked out my bridal shower video, I show you how I painted it and added some fun picture decor on it. If you're planning a bridal shower for this summer, I will have that linked up above. But I decided to repurpose it and use it as a jar for our faux sunflowers. Dollar Tree has this great sunflower ribbon, so had to use that. I had bought it a couple years ago. I think I actually have a picture of my dog when he was really little, like a puppy, eating it, and I hadn't used it, so I figured it was the perfect time to bring out the sunflower ribbon. I just wrapped it around the mason jar and then finished it off with a bow in the center. I also added a little bit of raffia kind of as a filling in between the sunflowers. I really liked the way that looked, and I cannot wait to display these in my living room. I think they're going to be a fabulous pop of color in that room. Next up, I'm bringing it a little bit back to the old YouTube crafting days. I used to always do the faux book stacks out of the crates at the Dollar Tree, and I haven't done one in a while, so I wanted to go back to the basics on this. You can find the wood crates in the Crafter Square section. They come in, I think, 2 different sizes. This one is actually more of a crate because those 3 pieces are separate. On a lot of them, they're fused together, but doesn't really matter. You're gonna get the same finished look. On the centerpiece, I'm using a shade of paint that I absolutely love. It's called Honey by Folk Art, and it is the perfect honey color or sunflower color. It is such a go-to in the fall and also in the summer season. And then on the bottom, I use the brown that I pretty much always use. It's called Burnt Umber by Apple Barrel, and then a shade just called White. Pretty easy on the top and pretty much everywhere else on the crate. For the wording on my crate, I used vinyl, but if you have a nice handwriting, go at it with a paint pen or even a paintbrush and some paint. Now, for kind of the main part, I am using a rub-on transfer. I got this from Essential Stencil, say that 3 times fast, and I like their stencils, but I absolutely love their rub-on transfers. It's so cool. It reminds me of the temporary tattoos you would put on as a kid. They are so vibrant. They really look like you printed it out and then maybe put it on like a sticker. They are absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to use them a little bit later in another DIY. I'm not sponsored or anything. I just really love the transfers. I know Dollar Tree does have some, and in a later DIY, I'll show you a sticker of a sunflower you could also use. And then on the left-hand side, I wanted to add a little bit of embellishment, and I thought the kind of black gingham went with the center of our sunflower, so I just added that on the side. This is a really cute faux book stack. You could put it on a real book stack or just place it anywhere as some extra decor. Speaking of going back to the basics, this next DIY, I am repurposing a glass bottle. Instead of throwing it out, I wanted to do a summer DIY, just painting some flowers onto this glass bottle. It really reminds me of crafts I used to do when I was younger. So this glass bottle is one of my favorites. I've used it many, many times. They are the sparkling lemonades that you can find at Aldi, and they are just the perfect bottles for crafts, and the lemonade is delicious. So it's really a win-win situation here. To make our petals, I'm using the shade. It's called Honey by Folk Art, and it's one of my absolute favorite shades. I told you in the book stack, it's just such a good summer shade. It works so well for honey and for the sunflowers. To make the flowers, there's not really any intense directions I need to give you. I kind of just freehanded it, and yeah, they're not the most perfect sunflowers in the world, but I think they do the job. The really only thing that I would say you pretty much have to be particular on is just making sure that the ends of the petals, the tips there, are a little bit thinner and kind of come out to more of a point than anything at the center of the flower. Then I did want to add in just a little bit of definition, so I went in with a lighter yellow shade. It's called Bright Yellow by Apple Barrel, and I placed that on the center part of our petals just to add a little bit more of a highlight. A little tip that I use is using a Q-tip. No pun intended, but now that I've said it, pun is intended because I'm using the Q-tip for all of the smaller details on our sunflowers. It's especially good at going on glass. I just find that you get a good amount of paint product when you use a Q-tip. So I'm going in with black for the center area of our flower petals. And then once that had completely dried, I definitely suggest waiting until it completely dries. Otherwise, you will have black paint everywhere. I went in with some white paint and a clean Q-tip to make some little small dots all around the black centers of our sunflowers. To add detail to the center of our flowers, I used that same beloved honey paint color and another clean Q-tip and just made dots all around the center section. The final bit of painting for our bottle is adding in a couple of leaves. This color is called Bright Green by Folk Art, and I used, no surprise, yet another Q-tip to paint out a couple of green leaves around our sunflowers. I loved the way that this looked during the day, but it really becomes magical, very summer secret garden vibes. Once you tuck some fairy lights down into it, I will have these ones, which are attached to a faux cork, linked down below in my Amazon storefront. Next, I wanted to do a DIY using black paint. You usually don't think of using dark colors when it comes to summertime, but I thought that it was a really nice contrast to those bright yellows and kind of orangey shades of the sunflower. So first, we are transforming this Dollar Tree milk jug sign. I had used it in a previous DIY, so that's why it has the white paint on it, almost like a primer. But then I went over it with some black paint. So if you're grabbing this sign, it's from the Farmhouse collection, again from Dollar Tree. You can just go over it in black. There's no need to prime it. And then once that was completely dry, I went in with my chip brush and some white paint to just add a little bit more of a distressed look and not have it completely matte black, but bring in some other color as well. Going back to those rub-on transfers from Essential Stencil, I just absolutely love these. I had so many in my pack, so I took, I think, about 4 of them, and I am just rubbing on and transferring them onto our sign. They transfer really nicely onto wood. Of course, you don't have to get these. This sign is from the Dollar Tree. It has the blessed and the family and the little sunflowers on it, so it kind of already has a transfer. So don't worry if you don't have these. You can find something either in stickers or in a rub-on from the Dollar Tree or really any kind of craft store. I grabbed a bunch of the faux sunflower florals from the floral section at Dollar Tree, and then some of this thick jute and wrapped it around the top. So it kind of made the illusion that this was a vase for the flowers and the sunflowers were coming out of it. I had a bunch of these tags that I got from the Dollar Tree. They are sticker tags, but I threaded it through some of this gold wire. I liked the shiny gold that it brought through. Thought it kind of went with the sunflower vibe, and then wrapped that around our sign. I don't have the best handwriting in the world, but I didn't want to use another transfer or a vinyl, so I just grabbed a pen and wrote "Hello Summer" on my tag. But of course, you can write whatever you want. You can say sunflowers, $5, or I don't know, make any other sort of tag. But I thought it added a nice little farmhouse touch to have the tag hanging off of our vase of sunflowers. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you again in 2 weeks' time for a Christmas in July video. Until then, keep searching, keep creating.